Sometimes you're not even explaining yourself anymore. You're basically asking them to agree with you. And not everyone has to understand every decision that you make. I feel like we explain ourselves way more than we actually need to. Like if somebody asks you why you said no, or why you have done something really differently, or why you have changed your mind. We people, there are so many people, they just, come up with such questions. So, you end up explaining yourself or come up with validations just to prove that why your decision makes sense to you. So obviously sometimes it's important, to explain your point or to come up with validation, but sometimes it is not important because your decision should make sense to you, not to everybody else. Like when you are saying no to something, you can obviously be polite about it, but you don't always need that, massive explanation behind every no. Because, sometimes we say no and we explain why we said it. And then we just, end up with explaining and explaining. And at that point, we are almost trying to convince them that we are allowed to say no. And you are not always going to get that approval. And which brings me to, something bigger one. Sometimes you make a decision that other people don't just get. Maybe it's about your studies, or it's about your career, or you're choosing a completely different path. Now you keep explaining that why I'm doing this, later I will do this. You just end up explaining the reason behind something that you are doing. But you have to understand that why, you are explaining something for the fourth and fifth time. It's okay if they giving you advice, you listen to it, and you thought about it, and still you want to choose something different. That's completely okay, because eventually you are the one who has to live with that decision. Not everybody has to understand your choice for it to make sense for you and only you. And actually, your decision aren't even supposed to, stay the same forever. You can literally change your mind. I don't know why we are so scared of someone saying, but literally you said the opposite before. Maybe I did. Maybe I said something. But in between I have learned something new. Maybe, my situation changed. Maybe, I don't want the exact same thing anymore. Obviously, own it when you have made a mistake. But you don't need to keep choosing something just because an older version of you choose it. And the same goes for needing some space. Sometimes I just need some time is enough. You can tell someone that you are not angry with them or whatever needs to be communicated. You don't need to explain, every single thought that's going on in your head. You can keep some things to yourself, and you are allowed to do it. Probably the one we explain the most is where we are in the life. Why aren't you graduated? Why aren't you working? What is your next move? And sometimes we answer because it's a normal conversation, but you don't need to turn your entire life into a presentation every time somebody thinks you should be somewhere else by now. Obviously, this doesn't mean never explain yourself if your decision affects someone else, or if it have hurt someone, or someone genuinely deserves clarity. Communication really matters, but my question is really simple. You're explaining it to someone because you're making them understand, or you want them to approve to your decision. And there's a big difference. Whenever you're, in such situations, just rethink before, doing anything. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.